Hi, welcome back to Programming for Absolute Beginners and the Computer Illiterate. Today we're going to talk about loops, which is a way of repeating sections of code multiple times so that you don't have to do everything manually. So last time, I know the video was a little bit long. It was about if and conditions, but it's very important as far as programming goes and as far as this particular video is concerned. So let's get started here. We'll do var result equals 0 just to start us out, and then document.write 0. Okay, and we'll save, file save, and refresh. Just like before, we created a variable, gave it the value of 0, and we're going to write it out. Nothing we haven't done before. So let's say we wanted to print out a bunch of numbers. Well, we could do something like this, document.write result, copy it, paste it, and result plus equals 1. This is shorthand, by the way. This is just the same as result plus 1. It's just a shorter way of writing it. So we could do plus equal 1. So adding 1 to itself and then storing it back into the same piece of code. So we can copy, paste that, and paste it, and paste it, and paste it, and paste it. Gets to be a lot of work, though. So there are better ways of achieving this. And they're called loops, because sometimes you want to do something in code a lot of times, but you don't want to have to copy and paste it and do it manually. So right now we're going to look at what's called a for loop. So for loop will do everything inside the bracket, the curly braces, for as long as you tell it to in here. So just like an if statement, you've got a bunch of different variables in the conditionals that happen here. So with a for loop, the first thing you do is create a new variable inside the loop, and it's got to be followed by a semicolon. So this is going to be our loop control variable, or an incrementer, which is why we call it I, just to make it easier to use. So it's going to start off as 0, and when the code hits 4, it's going to define this variable, and it's going to use this to control the rest of the loop. So after that, we have our var less than 10, or I less than 10, semicolon. And this is a condition, same as we looked at before with our if statements. So it's going to look at I, and for as long as I is less than 10 here, it's going to keep doing what's inside this loop. All right. And the last part of this is I plus equal 1. So at the end of every time it runs through the loop, it's going to add 1 to I. So it'll do this 10 times, because every time I gets increased by 1, when I becomes 10, it's not going to do this anymore, and it's immediately going to go down here to continue on with the program. And then it will do whatever is in the brackets as many times as you tell it to. So we could do some math here. Result plus equals 1 plus equals I. Let's do plus equals I. So now result is going to get whatever the I is added onto it before we print it out, and it's going to do this 10 times. So let's save, Control S, refresh, and there we go. So 0, first run through, result is equal to 0. It's going to start up the for loop. I is going to be equal to 0. Yes, I, 0, is less than 10. So we're going to do result plus equals I. So 0 plus 0 is equal to 1. Or 0 plus 0 is equal to 0. You write out 0, and there's our 0. It's done with this. It's going to go over here increment I by 1, go back through here. So do this part. So I is now 1, which is still less than 10. It's going to go down to result plus equals I. So result is still 0 plus 1. You're going to write it out. It's 1. And then we're going to increment I again. So I is going to be 2. Go back here. 2 is still less than 10. So let's do what's in here again. Result, which is currently 1, plus equals I, which is 2, becomes 3, and print out 3. And it's going to keep doing this until I is equal to 10. So to make this a little bit clearer about what I is actually doing, we're going to print out I equals, this is just a string, plus, because we're concatenating, I. So I is going to be turned into whatever I currently is in this iteration of the loop. We've turned it into a string. We're going to write it out. I is equal to this. And then to make the spacing a little bit easier, we're going to do that just on the end. I is equal to 0, I is equal to 1, I is equal to 2, all the way through until it's finished. So that's how a for loop works. We're just doing the code in here for as many times, for as long as this condition is true. And this could be any kind of condition, and we can, change this to 100 if we want. 100, there we go. And it'll repeat the same code and do it over and over and over again until I is equal to 100. So as you can see, it doesn't actually print out I is equal to 100, because when it comes up here, if I is 100, 100 is not less than 100. So then it just immediately skips back down outside of the loop. We could change that. We could do less than or equal to 100. And then it'll go through and actually print out the last 100 if we wanted. We could also change this to increment I by 2. So this way, we're increasing the first go through is 0. The second one, we increase by 2. We increase by 2 again. We increase by 2 again. And so we're only doing it about half as many times, because we're doing this as many times as I is less than or equal to 100. So it's possible, though, that we get caught in what is called an infinite loop. So let's say down here we change I equals 10, right? So every time we'll add 2 to I, then we'll reset I is equal to 10. So by the end of this loop, this is going to be 12, which is less than or equal to 100. And it's going to keep doing this forever, because this is always going to be 12. So we'll file save that, and this will probably crash the browser. See how it's just doing this? It's going to get hung up and just keep doing this forever. And that's called an infinite loop, which is something you want to try to avoid, because nothing usually works. See, the page is slowing down. What would you like to do? Let's just stop it. Okay, so now it's going to stop the execution. Let's get rid of this. Stop screwing us up there. We'll have to close this guy and just reopen it there. There we go. Back to normal. So when you're working with a for loop, the loop control variable I that we're using here, we only want to update that right here. This is the only part that we want to set anything equal to I. If we wanted to do something that's not a direct, math equation to loop over for some other condition, We can use what's called a while loop, and I'll show you that one in the next video. But in the meantime, to show that some of the other interesting things we can do with this, let's var input equals prompt, please enter a number. Then we'll do our input as, now let's just show you, just doing this. Number input. So here we're getting in a string from this prompt, putting it into the input variable. Then we're turning input into a number and storing it over and putting that into the input. Then down here in the for loop, what we can do is actually change this 100 to be input. So here in this conditional, it's going to check every time if I is less than whatever number you input. So we'll save this, control save, and do a refresh, and we'll do 1. Okay, so it's going to do it one time because input is 1, and after it does it one time, it's going to increase it by 2. Next time it's going to be 3, which is bigger than the 1 that we inputted. Let's try it again. I'll do it 30 times. Okay, see, there we go. Do it again 100 times. Okay. This is actually doing it half as many times as we entered, but because we're increasing it by 2. So if we increased it only by 1, then this counter would be accurate to how many times we actually want to run the loop. There we go, 100 times. Try 1,000 times. Now computers these days are really fast, so even 1,000 loops of this small little loop, it's not a problem for the computer. A huge number in there. It'll probably take a little minute, but it'll eventually finish, because this is not an infinite loop. It's just taking a long time to process because it was a large number that we inputted in there. So every time it's going through this loop, see, it still takes a little while. We'll do wait. Every time it goes through this loop, it's going to try to write something, increase the number. Keep doing this forever. Not forever, until I is less than the input. Which I guess we did a little bit long. We can stop this. Restart it. I'll enter a number. Nice little number. Nice little 10. There we go. So that's how for loop works. Maybe we wanted to change to ask for input inside here, right? And we just want to output whatever we input. And we'll take this out right here. And let's add another little variable, max times. We're going to ask it to just 3 times. We'll put that here, and we'll change this to max times, and change this back to less than so that it only does it that many times. And we'll do file save, refresh, please enter a number, another number, and see, there we go. We looped through it 3 times and asked 3 times for please enter a number. And that's the basics for loops, for a for loop. There are other kind of loops. We'll talk about a while loop in a minute. It's a little bit more complex, a little bit more dangerous, but you could do a lot more with it. And I'll show you that in a minute. And there's other loops. There's a do while loop, and there's a for in loop, which is actually a variation of the for loop, but we won't be able to talk about that until we learn about arrays and objects. So for now, we can go with the for loop. It's one of the most common and easiest. And till next time, thanks for tuning in.